This is Madia-as Digdigan Buenaflor, extending an invitation to each and every one of you everywhere, as my way of commemorating the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. I will read and serialize my novel, The Blood of Three, starting on Tuesday, August 27, and continuing episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Follow the drama on my YouTube channel. May we forever exhale and inhale love and peace. The memories flooded back so intensely and so fast. Mr. Miura and Loda only then realized that the tears have flowed freely. Tears streamed down Joybell's face too. They were all thinking of the same thing. They shared with her everything, including the time her mother finally decided to marry the endlessly patient, ever faithful and devoted Mr. Miura. "I have to share a secret with you too," Mr. Miura interrupted. In his jovial tone, he found it the right time to intrude in their silent grief. "I had planned to sing for you and put in a little dance routine. However, I don't think I'd be able to go through it without first feeling my knowing tummy with all this nourishment that had been screaming to be devoured." He turned dramatic and theatrical, which sent them reeling with laughter. They left their tears unwiped and allowed this to dry on their own as they thanked their creator. Strangely enough, Joybell set aside a big slice of her birthday cake, as he had always done for her daddy. Chapter 2. Early the next morning, after a tepid bath, which as usual was prepared by Mr. Miura, Joybell bounced down the stairs, through the streets, out of the fields in the outskirts of town, and up the hill, her light blue bouffant skirt flying behind her, her favorite dress sprinkled with colorful butterflies. She loved butterflies and often romped in the fields, her arms fluttering high and wide, basking in the warm sun, allowing the fresh balmy breeze to wash over her face. It was a daily joy for her, picking wild flowers from the field and the hill. As her own private ritual, she offered fresh flowers on their small altar for the Holy Family, a wooden statuette that Mr. Miura chiseled from thick wood. It had traveled with him everywhere and had protected them, this they truly believed. Singing a cheerful ballad taught her by Mr. Miura, Joybell pranced up and down the hill, picking the most colorful of the flowers. She loved the song, for it was funny and lively. She loved it so much that she taught it to her friends on the afternoon of her birthday. When she brought all the food to them, they feasted, singing Japanese songs, Filipino songs, American songs. That was how she was brought up. Her knowledge about the United States, Japan, and the Philippines was extensive. She appreciated the uniqueness of its country and its people, be it their love for freedom, nationalism, culture, or conviviality. Thus, she treated people, all people equally, with compassion, respect, and friendship. Indeed, her parents bestowed on her the greatest gifts of all, understanding and tolerance, compassion and love. At 16, she was the picture of pure innocence and an exhilarating spirit. Watching her was like gazing at a placid lake, cool and serene when the full moon glided on the surface, yet warm and bright once it reflected the glorious morning sun. In her youth, one could see the blossoming of nature's endowments, her ripening to the enchantment of maidenhood. On the hill, Joybell paused, and standing her toes, she took a good serving of fresh air as the soft breeze whipped her flowing hair. She sat down beneath the lone tree, cupping the wildflowers between her palms, her eyes closed, a hint of smile on her lips. Undoubtedly, she was weaving beautiful thoughts into her reverie. How she wished she could be like her mother, then she would be as happy, and she would have a man like her father, Mr. Miura. If she could have her man, then she would love him with all her heart and mind and soul. And he would love her forever. He would work and provide for her. She would work too, perhaps, as a nurse, and be his nurse as well. She would cook for him, wash his clothes, mend his shirts, and yes, make coconut candies too. They will have long talks, endless talks. There will be lots of kissing, hugging, and loving. They would have children, not one but many, maybe a dozen, if God wills it. Like her mother, she would sing lullabies for them, tell stories, happy stories, not the horror and scary stories Mario's mother told her children during dark, rainy nights, not those types of stories. She would tell stories about fairies and angels, about the wonders of arts and music, love and friendship, children and beautiful places, huts and palaces, princes and princesses, nature and its animals, both big and small, birds that sing and birds that talk, insects, those that crawl and those that fly. Yes, she will weave stories about butterflies and dragonflies, fireflies, and even houseflies. Then she would mesmerize them about his enchanting earth and the mystical sky, whimsical tales, biblical parables, just nice stories, pleasant, uplifting stories. Her smile widened, her dimples deepened. I wish my wish will all come true. She tightened her already shut eyes and crossed her fingers. Good morning, a husky voice startled her. Joybell leaped to her feet, pale and shaking, unknowingly dropping the flowers and clasping her hands against her chest. Oh, I'm sorry, the voice was apologetic. I didn't mean to scare you. Joybell looked at her intruder, embarrassed at her reaction. You didn't scare me. Oh no, not at all. You just startled me. You're Joybell, aren't you? He ventured, his eyes fixed on her. Yes. She hesitated, then stood up still, clasping her hands against her breast. But how did you know my name? The color had returned to her cheeks, and she looked radiant when the sun blinded her, sending out sparkles from her eyes. She never saw this man before, not one as young and yet as big as he was. She only saw Japanese soldiers, Filipino and Japanese children and old people. Well, she pressed him when she saw the amused look at her face. I just know you haven't changed a bit. Same old clasping of hands whenever you got excited or scared. His smile broke into soft shackles. You are still the same cute and sweet Joybell I know. And beautiful, but much, much more beautiful. His eyes mellowed, almost dreamy. Joybell felt the heat rush to her face. No one had talked to her this way except her father, who was lavish in his praises of her, his compliments sincere and real. This man seemed to know her well, including her peculiar habits. She swore she never knew him, yet there was something familiar. Was it his smile? Perhaps his eyes? She bit her lips, sending wrinkles on her nose as she searched her mind. Of course you're Joybell, that wrinkled nose when you have doubts. It's you, he laughed, showing a set of well-chiseled pearly teeth between pinkish, full lips. Come on, Joybell, it's Ernesto, the boy who used to pull your pigtail because it was silky and long and shiny like silver. Joybell's eyes grew big as she jumped and hugged him exuberantly, like a child of 8. Oh my goodness, Ernesto, is it really you? Phew, I thought you'd forgotten me. He wiped off an imaginary sweat on his forehead and gave out a mock sigh of relief. How could I forget you? But you almost did. Well, she stammered, but you look so different, and continued with a childlike look as if pondering, biting a nail, searching the air. So unlike the once gawky, reed-like, skinny, lanky boy I remembered, the one with the squeaky voice, There was a hint of naughtiness in her voice. Of course he was teasing, making light of what just happened. Joybell was embarrassed. Suddenly she felt strange. She just hugged a man. No, in her mind she hugged a boy, her friend Ernesto. They were very good friends before the war. They were neighbors. He was just a lanky boy of 13 and she was 8. He often joined them for dinner every time he took her home late after playing hide and seek. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you immediately. Don't apologize, he smiled and gently hurt Joybell's chin and slowly raised her face, searching her eyes. You still didn't believe me. I'm Ernesto. He wanted so much to reassure her. Joybell stared at him, speechless. Something she couldn't quite explain happened. Suddenly she felt an inner strange sensation, a chill, but a wonderful chill. Yet his touch sent sparks of heat through her. She felt her face turn red, like being scorched. Before she could react, he unbuttoned his shirt and displayed his chest. Look! She gaped at the scar, dumbfounded. Yes, indeed it was Ernesto. She never forgot that scar. She made it. They were playing patient and nurse, and she got carried away and used a real knife on him. Ernesto didn't cry, not a whisper. He was so brave that day. He became her hero. She worshipped him. You are such a grown-up man now, she smiled as she allowed her eyes to scan Ernesto from head to foot and back. He stood tall and erect before her, all 5'10", maybe 11, broad shoulders, strong arms. The sun caught his shiny dark wavy hair and shone on his complexion, smooth and evenly tanned, reddish like a bronze statue, with his well-sculpted face. She was drawn into his deep brown smiling eyes, shielded by thick curled glasses. His feature more Spanish than Filipinos. He got his finely chiseled features from her mestiza mother, a Filipina of Spanish heritage, and his physique from his well-built Filipino father, a perfectly carved statue, and yet he was just 21, 5 years her senior. And now here they were, face to face, both grown up, both radiant with youth. Joybell stirred and started to pick up her flowers. Ernesto bent and helped her. How are Mr. and Mrs. Miura? Daddy and Mommy are fine, she proudly announced. And your mom and dad? He looked down. Joybell sensed that he wanted to avoid the subject. Come, I'll take you home. I'm sure Mommy and Daddy would love to see you. I'd like that, but first, let's stay a little longer and talk. Well, okay. She sat down beneath the tree. Sit down. It's nice and peaceful here. Indeed it is. He sat down beside her. The town could clearly be seen from where they were. You're right. The breeze is cool and the grass soft. Nice place. You come here often? Oh yes, I like it here. I always come here every morning and whenever I feel lonely. Lonely? But why? He was curious. Oh, I mean, I come here whenever I feel like being alone. And just to think and dream. She groped for the right word, trying to avoid his searching eyes. Do you think of any particular thing or person? I mean, you must be thinking of something or someone. Ernesto stopped, concerned that he might embarrass her with such an intimate question. No, she cut him short. I just think of beautiful things, of people. People are good, you know. And of Daddy and Mommy, she was rumbling. How about me? You didn't even think of me, did you? He knew this would provoke her, but he did it anyway, hoping they would be kids again, free to tease each other. I didn't know you are, she pouted. Now, that's more like it. He laughed heartily, as always, saying Joybell. Joybell smiled and realized they were no longer kids. This was the first time she talked with a young man, and she was not even scared. In fact, she enjoyed it. Was this how being a grown-up would be? When they were children, they ventured to the nearby fields on Saturdays. Ernesto would fly his kite, especially when the wind was strong, and she would tag along, running after him. One such afternoon, tired from running and from the hot sun, They sat under the tree as they were doing now. They shared their dreams. Ernesto wanted to study at the Philippine Military Academy and become an officer, and she hoped to be a nurse. In fact, they were often played wounded soldier and nurse until Ernesto got that scar on his chest, and they stopped. Not that he was scared to get another one, but because he was reprimanded by his mother. He had fever, and Joyville cried and promised never to do it again. They also dreamed of going to America someday. After they finished their studies, they would have a stopover in Japan and visit the place of Mr. Miura's childhood, and on to San Francisco to meet for the first time her father's family, the Howards. Once they promised each other that they would always be friends, Ernesto went farther and vowed that wherever he was, he'll always come back to her. Like I promised, here I am, my dear friend. Ernesto gazed at her round blue eyes. And like I promised, I'm still your friend. She playfully bantered, but she noticed the burning sun. She began to rise. Come on, let's not make Daddy and Mommy wait. Ernesto helped her up, and hand in hand, they romped down the hill. Joyville took the longer route to avoid walking through the town and its checkpoints. They passed the creek that snaked beside the hill, reminiscing about their childhood. Stop, guerrilla. They stopped, petrified in place. Joyville bowed and elbowed Ernesto to do the same. He threw her a concerned side look. She straightened up. Oh no, he is not a gorilla. He's my friend. We were here when we were this high, Joyville explained in Japanese, gesturing with her hand. Ernesto heard many stories of Filipino civilians mistaken for guerrillas and summarily punished. He kept still but alert. He felt the soldier's squinting eyes pierce through him, scrutinizing him with suspicion. His stomach tightened, but he decided not to show fear. The two fierce eyes glistened and relaxed. Okay. The guard nodded and smiled. You, friend Joyville, also friend Japan. Joyville, good girl, father Japanese. The soldiers motioned them to go on and executed a brisk bow, then continued toward the town. Ernesto felt his muscles relax. He took a deep breath and thanked Joyville. She reassured him that everything would be fine. He was safe with her. It was almost noon when they reached Miura's home. Joyville ran up the stairs, panting with excitement, which concerned Mr. Miura and Lota. Ernesto was behind her. After she stammered through her hurried introduction, Ernesto politely greeted them. Simultaneously, Mr. Miura and Lota hugged Ernesto, overjoyed at seeing him again. Goodness, we hardly recognized you, they chorused as they led Ernesto to a bench by the window. Now tell us, how are your father and mother? Ernesto paused and took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for a challenging task. Indeed, it was to be an emotional journey back to the chasm of his memory. He told them, in between breaking voice, how his parents died after the outbreak of the war. 4 Japanese soldiers dragged them out of their home while they were having dinner. The rumor about their providing food to the guerrillas reached the Japanese. Ernesto, just past 18, with a body that shot up rapidly before he could be filled in, survived when his father pushed him out the rear window just before the Japanese broke down their front door. From where he landed, he caught sight of what the Japanese did to his parents. They beheaded them right outside their home and took their bodies away. He didn't even cry. It was not real. There were no tears, no time to mourn. That evening, he ran as he had never run before and escaped. There was silence. The news shocked them. They had fond memories of David and Isabel. He was a portrait painter with promise, and she was the daughter of a landed baron. Instead of following her father's order to stop seeing David, Isabel eloped with him, and later with their 4-year-old son, ended in the same town with the Howards and Mr. Miura. It was Shiro Miura who helped him get a job as a painter in Henry Howard's construction company. David was the guitar player Henry asked to accompany Shiro when they serenaded Lotta. David, like Mr. Miura, loved fishing, and the two enjoyed this pastime together. Isabel ran a small convenience store and dabbled in embroidery. She made Joybell's baptismal gown and later the veil for Lotta's wedding to Shiro. They imagined their children getting married to each other someday, but only if they fell in love. They decided it was time to set the new generation free to choose and to live their own lives without intervention. After all, they agreed, marriage was not a business merger or partnership, not a requirement, not a perfunctory ritual, but a choice. Their friendship survived through the laughters and tears of their lives, from the Howard's wedding and Joybell's birth, to Henry's death and the Miura's wedding and their parting, years before the outbreak of the war. Their children were both grown-ups now, but the good couple was gone. Lotta excused herself and went to the kitchen to prepare lunch. Joybell followed her, leaving Ernesto and Mr. Miura to themselves. He showed Ernesto all the pictures he had of Joybell from the time she was 10. Before they could move on to other subjects, Lotta called them for lunch. They had a hearty meal. They shared jokes as they relished Lotta's delectable mudfish dish and, of course, her homemade coconut candy. After their hour-long lunch, they shifted to other subjects, varied ones, but they lingered more on peace and brotherhood, a subject closest to Mr. Miura's heart. I wonder how long it will take for men to realize how utterly useless and tragic war is. Mr. Miura shook his head in frustration as the three listened. War, what a way to deal with issues. Mr. Miura's lament was deeply felt. That's all for today, to be continued on Tuesdays and Thursdays. May we all forever exhale and inhale love and peace. Thanks for being with me today. I hope you will inspire me with a like, share, and subscribe.